Yeah, I'm really excited about the work that you're doing. I think there's a lot of value to it, and it sounds like you really put the right group of people together and you're having a real impact. So
That means a
that's
lot.
what's important.
Yeah, that means a lot coming from you, especially. It's the whole podcast. We've been in existence for 7 to 8 years, and just in the past 2 years, we've come public. So because of the folks that are on our team, um, many of which still don't reveal their identity, but coming public and sort of trying to figure this whole podcast thing out. And we're growing it, and we're going to be taking it in some interesting ways here in the future as well. So things are happening very quick.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think that it's going to be exponential growth and a time of increase for you. And maybe it's because it's not, I believe it's not just because of the actual work that you're doing, but because you're seeking God. I hear your personal story when you were talking to Kirk. He's going to reward that hunger. Hunger is an escort to the deeper things of God. Hunger is the way to get more of Him, and you can have as much of Him as you want. There's no limit. And so the more you press into Him, the deeper He takes you, and the kingdom is ever expanding. We never get to the end of it, even in the life beyond this. That's the whole point, is that for all of eternity, we'll see a new aspect of how glorious He is and how incredible His love is for us. And it's not, we can't contain it. And so the kingdom has to continue expanding. Every word that God spoke when He created everything that we see, the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, everything in existence that was created by God, He spoke it into existence. And those spoken words have never hit the wall and stopped moving forward. They're continuing, that sound, those sound waves are continuing to create, to bring light and revelation. And the work you're doing through this podcast is carrying on the airwaves revelation and truth, so you can help other people to have illumination, to see the truth. And when you're talking about the truth of who God is and how He's affected your life, that testimony is so powerful. You'll affect people in ways that religion can't touch, politics can't sway. Your personal exploration into the truth of who God is and what His plan is for your life is your ministry on this earth. So it's an absolute honor to be able to have a conversation with you along your journey and just to see the work that you've done and how you have favor, because
well,
it's
thank you.
genuine.
Yeah, no, thank you. It gives me chills. That's very inspiring. It's faith is still very much a new walk for me. I'm still figuring everything out, and I think here lately, whenever I have found things to be challenging, or we have a lot of missing person cases that are being referred to us, and I just constantly say two words, and that's God's plan, right? Because everything seems so chaotic, but yet it seems like it's all planned out in a way as well. So, I mean, everything you just said resonates with me. Are you ready?
Sure. Yeah.
6 years old. That's how old she was the first time someone decided her life belonged to them. Kindergarten age. And from that point forward, for the next 20 years, my guest today lived inside the world most of us only think we understand from a headline or a movie. Human trafficking. Lies used to keep her there. She'll tell you herself this wasn't one bad decision or one bad relationship. It was 2 decades of a system built to keep her exactly where she was. And somehow she got out. That's usually where these stories end: survival and a slow walk back to the ordinary life, out of the spotlight. But that's not what happened here. Since 2009, she has been on the other side of this fight as a working expert inside the counter trafficking, working with law enforcement, colleges and universities, medical and mental health professionals, faith-based organizations, nonprofits, community leaders, government, and military audiences such as ours. She's built 2 keynotes. One is called The Truth About Human Trafficking, and the other, The Freedom Equation. She's also an author. The Truth About Human Trafficking, the book, lays out how traffickers target, groom, and exploit vulnerable people and how communities can shut that down before it starts. She's married to her husband, Robert, since 2003. They live in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains with 2 dogs, Cosmo and Kango. Kanga. Is it Kanga?
Kanga. She thinks she's a
I
Kanga.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the names. I love it. Sandy, Storm, welcome to the Find Me podcast.
Well, thank you. And thank you for mentioning my husband and my babies too. Okay. Robert and I have been married, like you said, since 2003, and he is my very best friend. I get to spend all of my time with him. I'm super spoiled with just a knight in shining armor, Prince Charming, that I get to spend every day with. And then my 10-year-old German Shepherd, he's a little under 100 pounds. We've been working him down a little bit. And then my baby is 10 months right now, and she is a German Shepherd Malinois mix. She's being trained to be my service animal, and she is really a very special breed. Her breeder picked the mommy and the daddy to make service animals for veterans with PTSD. I have complex PTSD. I call it spicy PTSD. And so she's a really good fit for what I was looking for. Lots of energy, really smart, and she keeps me busy. So we're in 24-hour-a-day training mode right now.
Wow, that's cool. Okay. So I got to ask, first question, what is the secret to a happy marriage?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the secret to a happy marriage is remembering that this is a friendship first. And when you get to be with your best friend all day long, every day, it's going to be you're an individual and they're an individual. So you have to always be thinking about how to be a friend, I think, and not be too selfish, be generous to one another. But really, at the end of the day, when you come into a marriage, it's a covenant. So your feelings don't really matter. Your feelings and opinions, I'm not trying to downplay the individuality, but you've given yourself fully to another person. That's what a covenant is. So it's 100% of you gets to serve them at all times. And it's been a process. We're both in the process. I mean, we're still learning how to be a better wife and a better husband. But the gift that I've been given from God to have the life I live is such an honor and a blessing. I just really remember every day that this is I I shouldn't even be here. I survived things that don't normally have a story to tell at the end of those events. And so every day is a blessing in our household.
Yeah, wow. That's that's amazing advice, and thank you so much for sharing it. That really does mean the world to me. I've been married now for 15 years, and I just love to see couples like you and your husband who are just working out so perfectly together. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, it's not always perfect. So we have had some Christian marriage counseling through the years. It's work. It's intention. My husband is married to somebody with complex trauma, so he's had a learning curve. I've never had a healthy relationship until this, and so I didn't even know how to be a wife or a mom to his son, who my stepson is a grown man. He has a family of his own. But yeah, I had to learn, and the local church taught me a lot. After I gave my life to Jesus, we became part of this small little church up in the hills, a little chapel with a cross on top. And the ladies there taught me how to do Bible study, how to I learned through baptisms and baby showers and potluck dinners how to live a different life than what I had experienced up until that point. And so that discipleship was so important. And at the core of everything I learned about the Word of God is this picture of a wedding, this picture of a marriage, this picture of the bride in Christ. And so I think of that with my relationship with my husband, that he is, I don't worship my husband, but he is like Jesus to me. And I want to reflect him and honor him and put that emphasis on his goodness, like the body of Christ does, the church does for Jesus. So I just want to encourage you, as 15 years is amazing. Keep going. People have asked me also, how do you write a book? I've written 4 books. Well, you start writing and you don't stop until you're finished writing the book. You have to keep going. That's how you complete it. And with your marriage, you'll complete it when it's done. You keep going. You made that promise and you just stay married to each other.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thank you. I'd like to, if you're open to this, before we really dive into your story, I'd like to always reach out to our community, our audience, and see if anybody has a community question that they wanted to submit. And we do have one here. Are you open to the question? So this comes from Sage Fuentes from Lenore City, Tennessee. How do you actually recognize trafficking when it's happening right in front of you?
Trafficking is at the same time, it's subtle, but it's also, it can be very overt. So through my life, I began, as you said in the introduction, I began being trafficked at 6 years old. The signs that a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 12-year-old will display are going to be very different from the signs that a teenager or a young adult or an adult person would display. So I can't just tell you, here's a checklist of what you need to watch for. And if it has A, B, and C, this is trafficking. What I would encourage instead is that your listeners, your audience, would be aware that they were created with intuition, with this knowing. I call it your knower. God put it there for a reason. And we all have the ability to sense, and I'm not getting woo woo or new age or anything like that, but we can sense when something's off. We can see if there is a child, for example, who is displaying sexualized behavior. That is not natural. So that's something that they've been groomed. They've been, that has been taught to them. That has been instructed of them. So, for example, there was somebody in my life that saw these signs, and I really wish that they would have done something about it. But as an adult, they told me, when you were a little girl, I saw the way he pulled you up on his lap, and I knew that there was something weird going on. I could tell that it was like he would touch his girlfriend, not how he should touch his stepdaughter. And so that person that saw that adult that saw that had the intuition, had that red flag. They knew that something was off. So we all have that in us. Maybe what's more important than having these 3 things identify somebody as a victim of human trafficking, maybe the better thing to talk about is what to do when we feel that something is off. That doesn't look right. You're checking into a hotel room with your family. You're on vacation, traveling down Route 66 on a road trip. You stop in a hotel. You check into the hotel and somebody's in the lobby. A man, maybe he's an older man, middle-aged man, and a young girl. Something just seems off. Something has caught your attention. You have noticed that there is something about their chemistry. There's something about the way they're relating to one another. Her head is down. He's holding her documents. He's telling her, go sit over there. She's not looking at anyone. He pays for his hotel room in cash. You watch as you're getting your family checked into your room. You've got a cooler and 3 backpacks and 2 suitcases and your kid's bag of toys and the puppy and their toys and their food. And you and your wife are trying to get all your kids into the room with all of your items. But you notice that this man sends the girl into their room and picks one little bag out of the car and goes in and closes the door, pulls the curtain down. Those are all signs. Those are all red flags. So I wish I could tell you, if you see this, it's human trafficking, you need to do something about it. A lot of people would like to say, somebody put a zip tie on my windshield wiper, or somebody put a mark on the back window of a car in a parking lot at a grocery store. That's human trafficking. They're marking human trafficking victims' cars. Never have I, in all of my years of working in this space and all of my years of working with law enforcement, have I been aware of a case that started in that way or that had anything to do with any of those kinds of so-called signs. But more often, a person who is aware that trafficking is happening and they take the time to actually pay attention to the human being next to them, across from them, within their field of vision, that those are the tips that usually lead to an investigation and eventually a trafficker being held accountable for their crimes, hopefully a victim being set free from that situation. So I don't know if this is the answer that they were looking for, but I hope that helps.
Yeah, certainly. I think that will help. And I think that is the answer they were looking for. I couldn't agree more with intuition and everything you just spoke on. So thank you very much for answering that.
A mission with purpose to find the missing using the power of social networking and cutting-edge technology. We're military veterans, technologists, scuba divers, and relentless seekers. From deep forests to sunken vehicles, from silence to signal, every clue matters. If you've ever felt the call to stand for something greater, this is your moment. This is the Find Me Project.
I want to start with what I'm going to call the origin story. This is going to be block one of our conversation here. And I want to go back. You were 6 years old when this began. I'm not going to ask you to relive details you don't want to relive. But can you take us back and describe what happened?
I can, and I will be very careful with the hearts of your audience. Whenever we talk about trauma, especially trauma that involves a child being violated, I always want to issue some kind of a trigger warning or some kind of just to be aware that this information can be difficult to process. So, like in the beginning of my book, I put a little letter to my reader to be gentle with yourself, to be aware of any feelings of discomfort or any anger or things that rise up inside of you. It's good to have a safe person you can talk to, a spouse, a counselor, a friend, a pastor. And it's good to have somebody that you can process the information with, because sometimes hearing a survivor's story can remind us of things that subconsciously maybe we've even never processed. But hearing my story might bring it up into the conscious mind. And now you have to unpack it and do something about it. So I just want to give everyone permission. Whatever your self-care is, I know that that's kind of a trendy thing. But as someone who's lived with complex trauma for so many years, I'm very conscious of self-care, getting enough exercise, eating healthy, having healthy relationships, walking. Walking my dogs all the time. This is something I do frequently. So we're constantly thinking of ways to mitigate the stress that's associated with talking about trauma. So now that that's out of the way, I will actually go back a little bit before I was 6 years old. When I was 5 years old, my dad took his own life. So he had medically diagnosed mental health disorder, and he came off his medication. So he was violent. My mother had dropped out of high school to marry him. They had a very unhealthy marriage, very unhealthy relationship, drugs, violence, domestic violence. It was just not a good place for a little girl to be. And after he took his own life, it left my mother as a widow. I was an orphan. We had nobody to provide or protect us. And I I wish I could tell a different story. I wish I could tell you that in our small town, the local church knew that this poor young mother had lost her husband, and they came and gathered around her as the church is instructed to do with widows and orphans. But that's not the story that happened. Instead, a hero came, and he was a businessman. He had money. He had a big vision of a new life that could be built away from the the eyes of family, the nosy neighbors, those church ladies who probably knew all the business, but they didn't want to get involved because it looked really messy from the outside. So here comes this hero, and he had a pretty good story. His family had money, they had businesses, and he convinced my mother to go build a new life. So we went to another state, far, far away from her network, her safety net. Before we left, he had already started abusing me. But once we got to the new place, um, he was never really, I mean, he was a businessman, but he never went to work. He had a business card. He was the vice president of a bank department. So they had the logo of the bank on his card. Sometimes he would go do some consulting, maybe commercial real estate, very vague. Sometimes we would go to country clubs so he could meet with his clients, or to a yacht club, or to a meeting in a fancy place. But it wasn't so he could do business. It was because he was training me by abusing me every day. And then he was taking me to these places where there were other men who wanted to abuse a child. So it was like a network of pedophiles. Sometimes they would come to our house. When I was a few years after we got there, we had bought a house. He found a house on the same street as the junior high school. So we lived in a brand new home. My mother went from poverty, from being a widow with nothing, to she picked the color of paint in the carpet and the facade on the outside. So there were times when people would come to our house and they would have indulgent experiences with a group of adults, but I would be brought in to be their forbidden experience. So these are adults that have careers in this community. They are members of country clubs or chambers of commerce. They're not monsters who hide in basements, or the picture that people have of a white van pulling up and tricking a kid to take some free candy. These were people I was supposed to trust. One of the men, his wife was a teacher, and I knew her. He had kids my age, and I knew his kids. Another of the men, one of them had a sailboat, and we would go sailing with him. But he had a place in his sailboat where he would abuse me. And not just me, there were other children that were abused. There were lots of adults abusing lots of children in this community. And it would happen at yacht clubs or country clubs, in back rooms of at parties and houses with lots of fancy things and beautiful views of the water. And it was just a really normalized event for me. Like every day, I knew that this kind of experience was going to be a part of my day, from the age of 6 till I was 12. So that's how it started. Excuse me. But that's not how it remained.
I want to pause there for just a moment and ask you a couple questions, and there's a lot to take in there. How many other children do you remember also being abused during this time frame between the time you were 6 years old and 12?
I think in the police report that I mentioned 3 by name, but there were lots more than that, 10 times that many, probably. Some that I didn't know their name. I remember one little girl at a country club, and she was like maybe from India or Southeast Asia, and she had hair on her forehead. Like, she didn't have a hairline. There was no separation between her eyebrow and her hairline. And she was probably 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. And I remember that when we went to the back room of the country club where we would experience these times of being abused, we didn't know we were being abused. We thought we were being selected. We thought we were being good girls, that they had picked us, that we were lucky, that we were getting to have special favors, that we would get special treats. So we didn't understand that this was abuse. This was just our life. This was what happened every day. But that little girl with the furry face, the man that had selected her was unkind to her, was really mean to her, and it hurt me. And I wanted to defend her and protect her. And that was a very different experience for me, because in all of the other times, whether they were making videos or taking photos or whether it was in my living room or in one of these places, it was always portrayed as like, this is a good experience. This is good. You're a good girl. These are good things that are happening. You're making me very happy. And this was different. This struck me as very different. So I don't know who that little girl was. I don't know her name, but that sticks out to me. That specific incident sticks out to me. So to tell you how many children were involved, I would say dozens. I was a child. I was actively experiencing trauma every day. And so I can't give you a definitive report or a definitive number, but I do have the police report that was produced when I was 12 years old, an affidavit. And I believe there are 3 names specifically in that one.
That's hard to even stomach or take in. So 6 years old, I want to say that's around kindergarten age. So between 6 years old and 12 years old, were you going to school, and on the surface, did it appear that you were living a normal life to everybody else out in public?
I went to school, and it did not appear that I was living a normal life. It appeared I was living an especially blessed life. We had brand new cars in the driveway. We lived in a brand new house that was built to my mother's specifications. We went sailing. We went to the yacht club. Well, I was a country club kid. I knew what fork to use. I was in school. I was the teacher's pet. I was in the talented and gifted program. I was the first one to raise my hand. I always wanted the teachers to be happy with me. Any adults, I always wanted them to think I was a good girl, that I was being helpful, that I was obedient, and I was drawn to the adults. In all of the hours outside of my school time, I was in conversations with adults. So if I was talking to another child, it was because they were being brought into this network, and I was using what I had been taught to bring them in. So I was very well spoken. I didn't want to hang out with the kids in class. I wanted to be the teacher's pet. So here's some red flags. I wish I could tell you that there was a creepy guy in a trench coat and that was what people needed to see. But no, I was probably the last person that anybody would have expected was living this alternative life, right beyond what they saw every day. I was in the drill team. I was learning a dance with my team, extracurricular activities. With the Talented and Gifted program, I was able to be there. It was a smaller group. So I was able to engage with adults more, and I excelled in those kinds of situations. So
If you could go back, what would you tell an 8-year-old version of yourself? What advice or what would you tell that little girl?
I would say none of this is real. You need to ask somebody that you can trust for help. But I wouldn't have had the language even to say what was happening. This life was so normalized to me. Every day I would come home from school and my stepdad would have me pick a video out of his assortment of videos, of pornographic videos. Like a normal 8-year-old goes and picks Cinderella or Beauty and the Beast or Snow White or a fairy tale. I would pick a pornographic movie according to the pretty lady on the cover. And to me, that was like my princess. So we would watch that together and then he would abuse me, or he would bring a friend over and then they would both abuse me and videotape it. So this is a normal Tuesday for me. This is not a I instead of making a snack for myself, like making a peanut butter sandwich after school, I would make my stepdad and his friend cocktails, and then we would watch one of these videos together. So it was never like my life did not have a realm of understanding where this isn't my reality. And when somebody's programming a child into an obedient slave, which is what they did to me, every aspect of their life is controlled. So yes, I have intelligence, and I took the tests that scored me into the Talented and Gifted program, but I'm confident that there was influence from the outside as well. That path wasn't even known to me, but it was procured. That I was put into positions where my grooming was reinforced. And then all of these situations that I'm in, there are other children being abused. It was so normal. How would I know what to say? How would I know how to ask for help? So I would go back and tell that 8-year-old, this world is a lie. You're not in reality. But I don't even know how I would have been able, or who would I have been able to even trust outside of most of the adults in my life were abusing me, outside of the teachers at school. But that was a very small part of my life. School was only a few hours a day.
Now, you said around the age of 12 years old, things started to change a little bit, or maybe not change a little bit, but you referenced the police affidavit. So can you take me to 12 years old and what happened at that age?
Yeah, one of the little girls that I was bringing home to spend the night had resisted the grooming and reported to a teacher what happened when she spent the night at my house. And my teacher asked me, I can't remember exactly what language she used, but she asked me if I was being abused at home. And I asked her what that meant, and she kind of told me more information. And I said, well, yeah, we do that every day since I was 6 years old. And I remember she started crying. It was traumatic for this poor woman. And then the next day, maybe 2 days later, the police came and took me out of class. They told me not to say anything. This is a secret. Don't tell anyone. And I had to ride in the back seat of the police car to downtown to do a report. And I thought I was in so much trouble. Who rides in the back seat of the police car except for the bad guys, right? And I was so confused and so scared. And when I made the report, they brought it back out to me. They put these two male cops in a interrogation room, cold metal, green paint peeling on the walls. not a warm, friendly environment by any stretch of the imagination. I am a 12-year-old all by myself with two men in a room. I've been in that situation before, but this was different and it was scary. And they were very demanding. They asked me a lot of questions that made me think they were angry. And then they brought back in a piece of paper and said, "We need you to sign this." And I read it. And then at the bottom, it says, they said, "We need you to sign this. If you don't sign this, you're going to have to testify in court. But we can promise you, you won't have to go to court if you sign this paper." And so they just had made the sentences like, "My name is blank. I am 12 years old. I live at this address." That's not how I talk. That's not what I said exactly. And then at the bottom of the form, it said that I was not signing this after being promised anything. And so I put up a fight with these cops that, "You're promising me something and the paper says that you can't make me any promises. And this isn't exactly what I said." And they were pressuring me and scaring me. And so I signed it. But then I told that story later to my mother, and she used that information in court to discredit my statement. And the attorneys, I have the whole court case. I have 66 pages, I think, of the court file. Um, and yeah, it was a very scary time. But when they took me back to the school, they told me not to say anything, and that in a couple days that he would be arrested. And so that was a very scary time for me. I did not understand what was happening, and I did not understand what I had done that had caused this bad thing to happen. And I had been practicing for this drill team event, and because the police had taken me out of school, I missed my last practice and they would not allow me to go on the field and do my drill team dance. Even though I had been to all the practices, I knew it by heart. So I know this might sound silly, but to me, the police ruined my life. They interfered with something that was really important to me. They confused me. They scared me. They promised me something and then told me to sign a paper that said they didn't promise me anything. And, but he did. He got arrested, and things changed very quickly. We had to move out of that house. Those cars weren't real. None of it was real. It was all fake. He didn't have any money. He wasn't really a businessman. These were all favors from favors from favors, friends who kept each other's secrets and that helped each other out. And so we ended up moving to a really bad part of town, not the suburbs, not the country club, but in a community. I remember our neighbor had roosters in their yard in the middle of the city, and there were gunshots every night, and it was a really scary neighborhood. And there were cockroaches and rats in the house that we lived in. And this is probably more in line with how a widow with an orphan child would live in desperation. So one day, not long after we moved into that house, my mother brought my stepdad back and told me to apologize and to stop trying to ruin his life, and that I had ruined everything. We lost everything because I opened my big mouth. And instead of apologizing, I ran away. I ran away and I went, this is important information for your audience. When a child runs away, they're always running away from something. We never have something we're running to. I wasn't running to safety. I wasn't running to a shelter. I wasn't running to a safe adult. I didn't have any of those things. I just knew I had to get out of this really bad situation. So I went like 3 blocks from my house. First, I went about a mile. I went to an abandoned little league field, and there was like a baseball dugout. Mark, I felt so safe there. I thought that I finally got somewhere I would be safe to sleep and I could stay there. I went back with my husband as an adult and we both cried. It was so scary to think of a little 12-year-old girl spending the night in this place. It was terrifying, terrifying. So then the next day, I came to about 3 blocks from my house to a highway overpass. And that seemed safer for some reason. There was like a little concrete shelf up under the highway that I could sleep. I had a backpack. I could use it like a little pillow. And when I was under that overpass, there was a convenience store, so I could go there and I would steal like chips or cookies or whatever, candy bars. And there were men that would be driving around the loop under the highway and they would see me and they would pull over into the parking lot of the convenience store, or they would see me coming out of the convenience store and they would say, "Hey, come here. Are you okay? Do you need some help? Are you hungry? Do you want to take a shower? I'll bring you back to my apartment and you can take a shower. Do you want to go get a Happy Meal? Do you want to get high?" By this point, my trafficker, and that's what I call my stepdad and my mother were traffickers. They had already taught me about smoking weed, about using alcohol it would help me to be compliant for what they wanted me to do. But I learned it numbed my body. I got an effect from it. And so I'm a 12-year-old child. A man with a car pulls up and says, "Hey, you want to go get high?" I said yes. And I got in his car and drove away with him to go get high. And then after he gets what he wants out of the situation, he brings me back and drops me back off under the bridge. So I can't tell you how many people took advantage of my vulnerability in those days. But there were a lot of opportunistic men. There were times they would ask me how old I was, and sometimes I would lie and tell them I was 14 because I thought if they knew I was 12 that they would call my mother, that I would have to go back to her, or I would have to go back to my stepdad. So I would lie and say I was 14 instead of 12.
Now, I actually want to go back. So when he came back and your mom let him back into the house, was there still an active case
Oh, yes.
against him?
Yeah. Yeah.
How is that even possible to you?
I can tell you my thoughts, my opinions, but I can't tell you definitively with any evidentiary proof. There were a lot of people who were abusing children, and they were important people. So I don't know who they were involved with, but he never got truly punished for anything that he did. So they called favors in. He had an attorney. I have every time his attorney went to court and did any kind of a request, I have what the judge stamped. So I can't say. I can say that he did not receive justice for the children that he abused, and neither did my mother. So I don't know how they got away with it, but I know that now I'm telling the truth and I'm exposing these people who would choose to not only abuse a child, but set up systems of child abuse with multiple adults involved in a network of abusers and cover it up. So these kinds of situations exist in every community, in small towns and big cities, in suburban neighborhoods, in fancy neighborhoods, and neighborhoods riddled with poverty. There are groups of people that abuse children, and they help each other to get away with it. It's happening way more than anybody realizes. Sometimes news gets out about somebody like Jeffrey Epstein, and it seems like an impossible reality. Are you telling me this creepy guy and his not even dynamic girlfriend are harvesting hundreds of 14 to 16 to 18-year-old girls from multiple countries over a span of decades? And nobody said anything about it? No, there were lots of people. Nobody saw it. No, there were a lot of people who saw. There were a lot of people who participated. And every time that happened, they gained leverage over those people. Jamie Dimon, the head of, I don't know if I can say JP Morgan Chase is the largest bank in the world, but it is one of them. He had emails, conversations, phone calls, lunches with Jeffrey Epstein all the time. He had billions of dollars running through his bank connected to Epstein and his friends. You can't tell me that all these people involved, and this is just one situation, right? Just one man at the center of this situation with the Jeffrey Epstein case, or whatever we want to call it, fiasco. There were scores, maybe hundreds of other people involved, and everybody was silent or helped to cover it up because they were part of it, and their participation was leveraging the people who were holding it all together. So to answer your question, whenever somebody abuses a child, that compromises them. They have a secret. They have a sin that they've committed that can be used against them to control them and to call in a favor. So these guys that would pick me up in the convenience store parking lot or under that bridge, they got away with it. I can't tell you anything about them. I can tell you maybe, I don't even know if I can describe one of their cars to you. I wasn't paying attention. I thought they were helping me. I never thought that I would have to tell somebody that, this is a description of the man who bought me a Happy Meal and then took me behind the McDonald's so I could pay for it. But he knows he has to live for the rest of his life knowing that he abused a child, that he took advantage of a child. And now my husband and I watch Chris Hansen. He has a network called True Blue. We watch his show Takedown. We've watched Predator, Hansen versus Predator for years. Have a seat. He's always telling people to have a seat. There's no end to the men who show up thinking that they're going to buy a child to abuse. Every time they do an operation, they think this is the last time we'll have to do these operations. By now, everybody knows that this is a risky thing to do. But for whatever reason, scores of men show up intending to purchase a child, and they all have the same story. When Chris brings the cameras out and puts the microphone in their face, what brought you here tonight? What made you decide to do this? And it's all their first time. They've never done it before. Almost all of them are married. They have kids. A lot of them have kids the age of the child that they came to abuse. They have something to lose. They have a career or a job or a position, a title, a pastor, a rabbi. I mean, these are people that are of influence and stature in the community. And so that's why, Mark, that's why I'm telling my story. Because this was happening when I was a 6-year-old, when I was a 12-year-old, when I was growing up, and it's still happening today. And until we start doing something about it to stop it from happening, it's going to continue. And I want to see it end. I want to see an end to human trafficking. So I'm willing to share some of the deeper, darker parts of my story because I'm going to shine a light on that darkness. I'm going to expose those cockroaches. They're going to not have anywhere to hide. And this is why. Because when I partner with somebody like you, who has a network, you have tens of thousands of people who could listen to this interview, who could read my book, who could learn the truth, then it's not just me with my little flashlight. Then I'm helping to illuminate their world. And when we're all holding the light, the darkness starts to flee. And we shift from being illuminating our own little world, and we become a lighthouse. We become a safe place, a place of refuge, where the people who are on the outskirts of the darkness can say, that's a safety net. That's a safe place where I can go and be in the light. And then we can really change this reality. So the 8-year-old me would have a lighthouse to run to. So I'm not just telling my story to relive these negative experiences or for trauma dumping, but with purpose so people can see if there's a 12-year-old little girl sleeping under a bridge and somebody is offering her help, that's a sign she's probably in danger if she receives help from that person. So it's really important that we work with law enforcement, even if the justice system has failed. In my case, the justice system failed. And if you read my book, you'll see it failing over and over and over again. And that's why I'm so dedicated today to working with law enforcement, to training task forces, to equipping the multi-jurisdictional task force with the type of undercover training that they can only get from somebody who's been through that, to bring understanding of the crime and the criminal mindset that I'm very familiar with to law enforcement so that they can identify traffickers and build trust with victims so they can remove them from those dangerous situations. And the ability to inform an operation is a gift. And I don't take it lightly. But that's what my passion is today. Just because the justice system failed me doesn't mean it has to continue. I can help to change that. And I've been able to work with hundreds of law enforcement officers in areas all over the world since I started this work. In 2009, I started in the counter trafficking world. And I know that there's a lot more in store. I know that the work I'm doing now with my partner, that we're going to be able to help even more agencies to get ahead of this problem, to be proactive so that there aren't little girls like me out there wishing that we had somebody to help.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, thank you for everything that you're doing. You no doubt are making such a big difference and saving lives. I go back to when I was in law enforcement. We would work human and sex trafficking cases, and a lot of what you're describing, we would encounter evil because it is evil. It's You describe them as cockroaches, and I love that because they are. It's evil though. When you look at into somebody's eyes like this, it's darkness at a level most people can't even comprehend. But I think back and how we didn't have that training. We had to really, you know, do on the job training in the moment as we were trying to navigate all of this. And luckily we were able to take a lot of the people that were in charge of these organizations down. But it's amazing to hear that you're working with a lot of law enforcement and they're receptive to everything that you're saying.
I think when I share my story and I share the details with somebody who can take that information and change the way they see the world that they are working in, they have a light bulb moment. They're like, oh, wait, aha, that was probably a trafficking victim. When I showed up on that call, it seemed like a domestic, but actually now that I know what Sandy experienced, I think that was probably trafficking. Now they're going to look at the next time differently. Or when I got the call to show up at the truck stop, it looked like this. but it wasn't. Now I know it was trafficking, right? So that's been a lot of the feedback I've received from law enforcement is that they've had those light bulb moments, those aha moments. But there's nothing compared to working an operation. And with my experience, if, for example, if we're on an undercover operation in a motel room and a team is identifying possible victims of trafficking through indicators on their ad. Now, the red flags are not going to be flying out in public as much as they are online. Trafficking has moved just like all of our businesses have moved online. And so there are certain indicators that an analyst can use to identify a possible trafficking victim. So if I'm working an operation and law enforcement schedules for that possible victim to come to the hotel, surprise, I'm not a customer. Law enforcement, they bring her into the room where I'm waiting. I have an ability to build rapport very quickly and to build a bridge of trust between this victim of trafficking and the law enforcement agent because I'm not a cop. And I can tell her, I'm not a cop. I'm not here to get you in trouble. They asked me to come because they thought you might want to talk to somebody who's been in a similar situation. I understand what it's like. This is probably the worst day ever for you. I always hated it when I was living this lifestyle and I had to engage with law enforcement. That street cred that I have and the ability to help somebody to see not only have I been in that situation, but I got out. I got out and I know the way to get out. I don't have a pimp controlling me anymore. I live the life the way I want to live. I'm living my life, not the life. That is something that even the best training can't offer a law enforcement agent, that credibility. And I've been in situations like that where a victim will tell us, the names, the makes and models of the cars, the license plates of the pimps that have children, that are trafficking children, the hotels that they stay at, with their phone number. I mean, we can gather all kinds of information for other investigations just from a conversation with one of these girls. And then hopefully help her to exit and to get free. But most importantly, what I really want to see is for these traffickers to go to prison for the rest of their lives. They should not only be punished with prison time at the fullest extent of the law. Maybe it's 25 years in the state that one of the cops that's listening to this is in or something. But if we can help them build a financial crimes case, sometimes each of the transactions is its own charge. Not only can those assets be seized, they were gained through criminal enterprise, they can be seized. That can fund the task force. That can fund the operations. That can fund the restitution to the victim so that they can have something to build their life back on. So that's what I'm very passionate about today, and the work I'm doing today with my partner is to help law enforcement to build these financial crimes cases, to target traffickers and dismantle their operations so that it's not just, stopping them from that crime, but making sure that they can never do it again. And then their victims have something to start over with.
Wow. Again, great work to everything that you're doing. You're making a world of a difference. You really are. I know you have a hard stop time coming up here, and I want to be respectful of that. I could continue to talk on this, trying to inform our listeners, the families listening for a long time, and I know you could too. If there's law enforcement, if there's families that are listening to this right now, maybe there's an actual person that's involved in trafficking listening. Where can they find more information about you, everything you're doing? Maybe they want to work with you. Where can we direct them?
Right now, you can go to survivorsandystorm.com. I am on LinkedIn is my professional network that I use to reach out to business relationships. If you are a victim of human trafficking or if you think that human trafficking is happening, please don't try to contact me. I'm not going to be able to help you. you need to call local law enforcement. There's a national hotline, there's hotlines in almost every state now, but local law enforcement can respond the quickest. And the information, if you suspect trafficking is happening, making a detailed report to your local law enforcement is the most important thing you can do, because it might not make an immediate difference right now, but that report might be part of a case that 6 months later is 3 states away. And you calling and making that report, and the make and the model of the car, the time of day, the clothes they were wearing, you never know where that information can go, but it's very important that it's given to local law enforcement. And if you recognize trafficking happening in real time and you're positive, you're convinced it's trafficking, it's a 911 call. That is an emergency. You need an immediate response, and you should not intervene. Traffickers are very dangerous. You're dealing with a lot of money. They do not want to risk getting their business shut down. They don't want to risk their victim leaving the situation that they very carefully and intentionally groomed them to participate in. And so I would never suggest that a citizen would try to remove a victim from a human trafficking situation or confront a trafficker. Get as much information as you can. If you can get a covert video or photo to include with your report, that could be helpful. But don't put yourself in a place of risk. Traffickers are violent. They're motivated by evil. There is, when somebody goes from looking at another human being and seeing their inherent value, God created us in his image. He literally put his image on us. That is, you could never calculate the cost of Jesus's blood, the price that he paid for us, the value of a human life. We could never put a price tag on it. But when someone dehumanizes their fellow man and turns them into a product with a price tag, they've went into a realm of evil, of sinfulness that is truly impossible for somebody that has not experienced that to understand. So they're never going to be safe to confront unless you're a trained law enforcement. So I do want to encourage people. I would love to connect with anybody who wants to talk about training their agency or building a multi-jurisdictional task force, doing some consulting work, helping with case building or undercover operations. My partner and I can tell you my partner is Heidi Chance. I can't announce the name of our business yet. We haven't quite launched yet, but we are working together. And she is former female undercover at Phoenix PD. I think, she's retired from that. And now she's still in law enforcement, still case building. Her longest, the case with her longest sentence was 493.5 years for a trafficker who had 7 victims in his case. So she's my hero. She's had several traffickers. She's built cases that are doing over 100 years in prison. And we're working together now to train law enforcement and to activate them. So you can look me up, Survivor Sandy Storm on LinkedIn. Heidi Chance, my partner, is also on LinkedIn. And we're building something to offer that I think is going to it's the first of its kind, a female undercover and a survivor working together on these operations. I think is going to be really powerful. But I love what you're doing, Mark. I love the passion that you're doing it with. And I believe this is the call of God on your life. So just being able to have a conversation with you around it has been truly an honor.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Sandy. I really appreciate the kind words, and we'll be sure to put your contact information, how people can find you, in the show notes and anywhere else that this will be made available at.